Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed and see how each movie did, so let's get started. Number 5 was Devotion, making $2.7 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $13 million, and that total stays the same worldwide, as while it has been released in some international countries, the international totals didn't really do anything to affect the worldwide total. So in regards to its drop-off, this actually did, in my opinion, a little better than I thought, as you would expect for a movie that opened on Thanksgiving weekend to drop significantly in the weekend after because, well, it's the weekend after Thanksgiving, not too many people are as available, and not too many people would go to the movies. But this held better than I thought. It just dipped 53%, which is a benefit, to say the least, as this film is still doing rather poorly. It isn't anywhere near that halfway point of its initial $90 million budget. It's looking like it's not going to get there. It's just that the marketing wasn't there, the buzz wasn't there, there just wasn't a lot of interest for this movie. And while audiences who saw it are certainly encouraging others to go see it, as evident with the pretty solid hold this weekend, it was not enough to help salvage this. So yeah, this is looking like another big flop, a pretty big disappointment overall, as I have heard good things. Some people who have seen it and have reviewed it that I know of said that they really liked it. But clearly that's not translating well for general audiences. There just was no interest for this movie, unfortunately. We'll see where it goes from here, but it's not looking very good for Devotion, sadly. Number 4 was The Menu, making $3.4 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $24 million and a worldwide total of $47 million. So this was a pretty solid weekend for the film. Not only did it move up a rank, but also it had the best hold out of any of the holdovers from last weekend in the top 5, just falling 37%, which is exceptional for a horror film. Add on to the fact that it's about to surpass its initial budget of $30 million domestically and is just $13 million away from doubling that worldwide, you have yourselves a pretty decent sleeper hit for Searchlight right now. This is doing very well regardless of how well it opened. The fact that it did as well as it has, the strong word of mouth, just shows how audiences are really responding well to this movie. We'll see how much longer this lasts. It is definitely gonna start slowing down soon, especially with all the bigger holiday titles hitting our theaters very soon, but I think this movie is still on the right path. It's still continuing to exceed a lot of people's expectations and is becoming one of the few small hits that come out of nowhere and surprise all of us. I don't know what else to say, but good job. Number 3 was Strange World, making $5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $25 million and a worldwide total of $42 million. So the film did not have the best second weekend for itself, as it dropped 58% from last weekend, which, you know, for any movie opening on Thanksgiving weekend, gotta be honest, that's kind of what you really expect, because again, it's the weekend after Thanksgiving. Not too many people are gonna be going to the movies, but given that this is an animated family film from Disney that typically opens their films on the Thanksgiving weekend, this is a terrible indicator of things to come. It definitely shows that word of mouth is not doing this movie any favors. Audiences do not generally like this movie as much as other, not just Disney movies, but animated family films this year. Even films like Lyle Lyle Crocodile held better than this movie did, which is really unfortunate, as this movie has quite the hefty price tag that I mentioned last week, where the budget was indicated to be anywhere from $135 to $180 million, and it's struggling to get over $50 million worldwide, let alone domestically. And I gotta be honest, that it'll be lucky to get over that $50 million milestone domestically, and I even have my doubts of it surpassing 100 million worldwide. It's just that things are just not working for this movie. There's just too many things going against it, and it's going to probably not going to help in the coming weeks, as it's probably going to get overshadowed by the holidays and other family films hitting theaters around the time, like Avatar and Puss in Boots, that are probably going to captivate a lot of people's attentions more than this movie, unfortunately. So while I think it may have a shot at still being in the top 5 for a couple more weeks, it's still going to hurt and struggle from this point on, as it's just not doing well, sadly, which would be something for a typical family film, but given that this has the Disney name attached for it, is quite the unfortunate circumstance for this movie. Number 2 was Violent Night, opening with $13 million domestically and $20 million worldwide. So this movie was able to exceed a lot of people's expectations. The fact that it actually was a pretty close race between the number 1 and number 2 spot. As you'll see in a few, once we get to the number 1 movie, you'll see that there is a $4 million difference between the number 1 and number 2 movie, which is pretty impressive for this film. Many had very low expectations, but the fact that it was able to get that close to the number 1 spot is really impressive and not at all surprising to me, because if you remember last weekend, I expected this movie to do better than what many people thought it would. I just found it to have a lot of things working for it. The fact that it was the really only Christmas movie hitting theaters this year, the fact that the marketing was as solid as it was, and the buzz was really good. I thought it all really helped this movie out and definitely paid off, as the biggest benefit of this opening weekend is the fact that the movie only costed $20 million, and it's already made a majority of that domestically, and it has already surpassed that total worldwide. So pretty much all it has to do now is double it, which I think it will be able to, as I feel like word of mouth might help it out a bit. I mean, sure, it got a B+ on Cinema Score, which is definitely concerning, to say the least. But then again, I wasn't really expecting this movie to get all of the acclaim, given that it is an R-rated, violent, raunchy Christmas movie. But yeah, that still might be a bit concerning. But once again, given the subject matter of the movie, this is probably the best they could have hoped for. And I look forward to seeing where it goes from here, if it will manage to leg out and be a decent sleeper hit that puts up a good fight against all the other big blockbusters and becomes a big box office success. There are some things holding it back, of course, obviously Christmas purists who are probably going to want to boycott this movie just for being over a PG rating, and the fact that, again, the B+ Cinema Score might be concerning. And also, given that this is a Christmas movie, it does have an expiration date, and that is, well, what do you guess? Christmas. And once Christmas comes and goes, I think that will definitely be it for the movie from there onward for sure. But as far as the opening weekend goes and how everything looks right now, this movie's off to a pretty decent start, and I look forward to seeing where it goes from here. So yeah, very solid opening for Violent Night. We'll see where it goes from here. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, which was, for the 4th week in a row, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, making $17 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $393 million and a worldwide total of $733 million. So probably the most surprising thing about this weekend's totals for this movie is the drop-off. Now, as I've stated a bajillion times in this video already, typically any movie that releases around Thanksgiving weekend or is already out by Thanksgiving weekend, pretty much anything on Thanksgiving weekend is going to do really well. But after that, Thanksgiving weekend, the weekend after, things are probably not going to do well for those movies. They're probably going to plummet because, again, Thanksgiving weekend, everyone's out for the holiday, but the week after, not so much. And boy, did this movie have a rather larger than expected drop off as it dipped 62% this weekend, which in all honesty I was surprised by seeing that. I thought the movie would have probably held a bit better given the strong Thanksgiving weekend. I thought that would have maybe helped it out a bit, but clearly not. It's still suffering a bit from just the fact that the movie isn't as good as the first one, it seems. But with all that said, once again, like I said earlier in regards to the film's second weekend, this really doesn't amount to anything, as the film is still doing very well right now, as domestically it is already the third highest grossing film of the year, as it has already surpassed the Batman, Minions: The Rise of Gru, and Jurassic World Dominion. It is also 7 million away from becoming the third film this year to surpass 400 million domestically, as well as just it being 18 million away from surpassing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness's entire domestic run, which I think the film will be able to do at least by this week or in the coming weeks. Don't think it's gonna surpass Top Gun Maverick, though. It's just out of the question. That movie was just such a juggernaut. There's no way this Black Panther is going to surpass Top Gun Maverick, unfortunately. As in regards to worldwide, I do believe that the film will be able to enter the top 5, as while it is the 7th highest grossing film of the year worldwide, it is roughly less than 30 million away from surpassing Thor: Love and Thunder's entire worldwide run, and a little bit more than 30 million away from surpassing the Batman's entire worldwide run. So once again, maybe by the end of this week or in the coming weeks, I definitely think it will enter the top 5 highest grossing films of 2022 worldwide. Overall, yeah, this film is still doing very well. Obviously not as much as the first Black Panther. That was just its own sort of thing. No one was expecting it to do as well as it did, and yet it did. But this movie is still doing very well. It's definitely probably going to be the biggest Marvel film of the year domestically. Worldwide is where the probably in that definitely probably comes in, as I do believe that it's probably going to struggle to get to the $955 million total that Multiverse of Madness got to. It might be a bit of a tall order to fill in, as well as the $1 billion range. Also seems like a much bigger, taller order for this film to cover. But yeah, this film is still obviously the biggest film in months to come out. People are still rushing out to see it, and it's still doing very well. It will be interesting to see where it heads off in these coming weeks, because once again, it did have a much bigger than expected drop off, and with the many bigger blockbusters that might appeal to audiences a bit more, seeing as how pretty much everyone who wanted to see this movie has pretty much already done so. I feel like the films like Avatar and Puss in Boots are probably going to steal a lot of the attention away from this movie in the coming weeks, and we are going to see this movie slow down, maybe not significantly, but definitely noticeably slow down. So interesting point for this movie to be in right now. We'll see where it goes from here, if it can muster up any more juices for itself. But yeah, overall it's still a pretty solid hit regardless, and I'm still curious to see where it goes from here. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, and normally this would be the part of the video where I discuss the upcoming new films hitting theaters this weekend and seeing where they would land in the top 5, but as far as I know, there is nothing new coming out this weekend. Most of the movies are in limited release or are just re-releases of other movies, some of which are very questionable, like the Father Stew re-release of all things. Yeah, that's real. So I honestly don't think there will be any new significant changes to the top 5 next weekend, so don't be surprised if you don't see a box office chat next weekend, as there probably won't be any significant changes to talk about in regards to the top 5. But if there are some new movies that affect the top 5, or there are significant changes to the current top 5 that occur next weekend, I'll be sure to discuss those changes and the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. So that's gonna do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied? Unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.